Welcome to subscribe.
Master Story Engine 4D Fusion. At the family dinner, my sister announced she was moving into my house, until the realtor opened one sealed folder, 60003. 1 dot. 2 dot. 3 dot. 4 dot. Ellie, Eleanor, 32. Poi. Laura, 36. Oh, honey, you know I'm just looking out for you. The realtor Kathy, 60. Margaret. Laura Ellie. Frank. 2000 plus, Ellie, 2000 plus, Laura, plus, Ellie Kathy, 2000 plus, Laura. Ellie. Laura. Laura Ellie. Laura. Ellie. Laura. One estimated word count for this chapter, about 2,000 English words. Text. Look, you know those family dinners where everything's going fine, the roast is perfect, the potatoes are crispy, and then somebody says something that just sucks all the air out of the room? That was our Sunday. Except it wasn't my mom's famous beef tenderloin that did it. It was my sister, Laura. I should have known something was up the minute she walked in wearing her power suit. It was a soft cream color, probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and her hair was that perfect beach wave thing she pays $300 for. Me? I was in my favorite jeans and an old flannel, still had dirt under my nails from planting the new begonias out front. I own that house. Well, I inherited it from Grandma Rose 3 years ago, paid off the last of it last spring. It's a 1920s bungalow, yellow with white trim, a big front porch, and an oak tree in the backyard that I've been nursing back to health for a decade. It's my everything. Mom had gone all out. The dining room table was heavy with the good china, the silverware that only comes out for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and a centerpiece of sunflowers because she knows I love them. Dad was already at his spot, halfway through his first beer, talking about the transmission he was rebuilding in the garage. Laura's husband, Derek, wasn't there. Client meeting in Denver, Laura said, waving a manicured hand. He never came to these things anyway. So we ate. Mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, the roast that melted on your tongue. I told them about the library fundraiser, how Mrs. Henderson donated a first edition Steinbeck that had everybody buzzing. Laura talked about her latest listing, a 6-bedroom mansion over in Willow Hills that she was gonna flip for a killer commission. Mom beamed at her. She always beamed at Laura. Then dessert came. I brought it, of course, a blueberry crumble pie I'd made that morning, the crust just the right shade of golden. Mom was cutting into it when Laura set her fork down with that little clink that means she's about to make an announcement. So, she said, dabbing her lips with the linen napkin, I've got some fantastic news. Huge, really. I remember thinking, oh God, here we go. Maybe she was pregnant. Maybe she was getting her own reality show. With Laura, you never knew. I'd been thinking a lot about family lately, she went on. And I've decided it's time for a change. A big one. She looked directly at me then, her smile wide and bright, the kind she uses on clients. Ellie, honey, you rattle around in that big old house all by yourself. It's not healthy. So I've decided to move in with you. I thought I misheard. The fork in my hand stopped halfway to my mouth. I'm sorry? I'm moving in, she said again, slower this time, like I was 5 years old. I'll take the big bedroom, you know, the one with the window seat that overlooks the garden. It gets the best light. You can have the guest room, it's very cozy. Mom set the pie server down. Her face was doing that thing it always does when Laura pulls a stunt, half horror, half please don't make a scene. Laura, that's quite an idea. Isn't it? Laura didn't take her eyes off me. Look, Ellie, you've been so lonely since Grandma passed. This way, we can be together. You can cook, I'll handle the decorating. It'll be just like when we were kids. Except when we were kids, Laura tormented me. She'd hide my books, break my toys, and tell all her friends I was adopted. Which was a lie. I have Grandma Rose's nose, for heaven's sake. But Laura never needed truth, she just needed the reaction. I finally found my voice. Laura, you can't just decide to move into my house. Our house, she corrected, still smiling. It's Grandma's house, really. And I'm the oldest. It makes sense. I mean, what are you gonna do with 3 bedrooms? You don't even have a cat. I have begonias, I said, which was stupid, but I was so stunned I couldn't think straight. Dad just kept chewing his pie, staring at the center of the table like he was studying the sunflowers for a science project. Mom was twisting her napkin. Laura, dear, maybe we should discuss this later. Privately. No, Mom, Laura said. We're discussing it now. Ellie, I've already spoken to a contractor. We can knock down the wall between the living room and the den, open the whole space up. French doors out to the porch. It'll add $100,000 to the resale value. I know what I'm doing, I'm a realtor. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the hardwood floor. You spoke to a contractor? About my house? Without even asking me? I knew you'd be emotional, Laura sighed. You always get emotional. That's why I'm being the practical one. Honestly, you should be thanking me. I'm saving you from another 10 years of Saturday nights spent alone with a book and a glass of wine. I felt something hot and sharp rise up in my chest. My life isn't lonely, Laura. I have friends. I have the library. I have my garden. I go to the flea market every Saturday morning and I like it. I don't need you to save me. You're 32 and you haven't had a boyfriend since college. You spend more time talking to your tomato plants than to actual people. Laura ticked these off on her fingers. Face it, Ellie. You need someone to take charge. And I'm the only one who's ever had the guts to do it. That's when Mom should have stepped in. Should have said, Laura, that's enough. Should have reminded her that I'd been the one taking care of Grandma Rose for the last 3 years of her life, while Laura was in Miami finding herself. Should have mentioned that I was the one who paid off the repairs on the house, who fixed the leaky roof, who laid the new kitchen tile with my own 2 hands. But she didn't. Instead, she said, honey, maybe Laura has a point. That house is awfully big for one person. I looked at my mother. The woman who'd told me 1,000 times that I was her rock, her steady one, the daughter she never had to worry about. And there she was, letting Laura steamroll me again. Because that's how it's always been. Laura screams, Mom soothes, Dad disappears, and I give in. Not this time. I pulled out my phone. You know what, Laura? You want my house? Fine. Let's settle this properly. I'm calling Kathy. Laura's smile flickered for the first time. Kathy? Kathy Morrison? The realtor? She's the one who handled Grandma's estate, I said, scrolling through my contacts. She knows every inch of that house. She knows the deed, the tax records, the whole history. If you're so sure you have a claim, let's ask her. Laura laughed, but it was a tight laugh. Ellie, it's Sunday afternoon. You're not going to bother an old woman on a Sunday. But I was already pressing the call button. Kathy picked up on the 3rd ring. I could hear her TV in the background, some golf game. Kathy, it's Ellie. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I've got kind of a weird situation here. Could you possibly come over to Mom's? I need you to bring the house file. The whole thing. There's something Laura wants to discuss. There was a pause. Then Kathy's voice, dry as old leather, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up. The dining room was absolutely silent. Dad had stopped chewing. Mom's face had gone pale. Laura was staring at me like I'd just thrown my pie in her lap. You're being ridiculous, Laura said, but her voice had lost its swagger. What's Kathy going to do? The house is in your name, we all know that. But that wasn't what Laura was afraid of. I could see it in her eyes. There was something else. Something buried in that file she didn't want brought into the light, 20 minutes later, Kathy's old Ford pickup pulled into the driveway. She didn't bother knocking, just walked right into the kitchen like she'd done 100 times before, a thick manila folder tucked under one arm. She was wearing a windbreaker and those thick soled shoes she always wore, and she smelled like the vanilla-scented vape she used. "Afternoon," she said, nodding to everyone. "Ellie, your begonias are looking real good." "Laura, what's this foolishness I hear about you trying to take your sister's house?" Laura squared her shoulders. "I'm not taking anything. I'm simply pointing out that a family property should be shared by the family." "Ellie's just being stubborn." "Uh-huh." Kathy set the folder on the kitchen island. It was stuffed so thick the edges were worn and soft. A sealed envelope was clipped to the inside cover, one I'd never seen before. My name was written on it in Grandma Rose's handwriting. My heart started to beat a little faster. "Kathy, what's that?" I asked, pointing. Kathy ignored me. She opened the folder and spread out the paperwork. The deed, with Eleanor Grace Thompson in clear type. The tax assessments. The mortgage discharge paperwork. All of it neat and legal and indisputable. "Seems pretty clear to me," Kathy said. "This house belongs to Eleanor." "That's what Rose wanted." Laura scoffed. "Grandma was old. She probably just signed whatever Ellie put in front of her." Something snapped in me. "I put in front of her? I spent 3 years changing her sheets and reading her books while you were posting beach selfies." She knew exactly what she was doing. "Girls," Mom pleaded. "Please." But Kathy wasn't paying attention to us anymore. She was looking at that sealed envelope. She pulled it loose from the clip and held it up. "You know, Rose told me something once. She said, when the time comes, if there's ever a fight over my house, you open this envelope." The room went absolutely still. Kathy's eyes moved from me to Laura, then to Mom and Dad. She sighed. "Seems like the time has come." She slid her finger under the seal. "Wait," I said, but I don't know why. Maybe I was scared. Maybe some part of me already knew that whatever was in that envelope would change everything. Too late. The paper came out, yellowed and crisp, covered in Grandma's tight, slanted cursive. A legal document. I saw a notary seal. I saw signatures. Kathy read it silently. Her face didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Something hard and sad. "What does it say?" Laura demanded. "Let me see it." Kathy ignored her. She looked at me. "Eleanor, honey, you might want to sit down for this." I didn't sit. I grabbed the edge of the kitchen island and held on. "Just tell me." She took a breath. And then she said words that made the world tilt on its axis. "This is a custody and guardianship agreement, dated June 12, 1995. Signed by Rose Thompson, and witnessed by your parents here." She looked at Mom and Dad. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad finally looked up from his pie. Kathy continued. "It states that Eleanor is not Rose's biological granddaughter. Eleanor was adopted by Rose at the age of 3, from a family situation deemed unfit by the state. Rose was." The silence in that kitchen was the kind you feel in your chest. The kind that sits there like a stone and won't let you breathe. I stood there holding on to the edge of the island, and for the first time in 26 years, I looked at my mom and dad, and I didn't recognize myself in their faces. Mom had her hand clamped over her mouth like she was trying to shove the words back in. Dad stared at the table. His fork was still in the pie, and he didn't pull it out. I looked at Kathy, my realtor. She was the only person in this room who wasn't my family, and right then she felt like the only person I could trust. "Kathy," I said, my voice coming out scratchy. "Read it. Out loud. All of it." Laura jumped in before I could finish. "Wait a minute. Just wait. If she's not even blood, then this whole thing is bullshit. Grandma Rose wasn't her grandmother. So why would the house go to her?" Her voice was sharp and twitchy, She was looking for a crack to pry open, and I swear I could see her brain searching for a way to twist this in her favor. Kathy didn't flinch. She'd been a realtor for 25 years, and I'm pretty sure she'd seen families fight over ugly lamps and broken lawnmowers. But she'd never seen this. Nobody had. "I'm not a lawyer," Kathy said, calm but firm. "But I've dealt with a fair number of estate documents. This custody agreement is tied directly to the title of the house. It's a sealed file, notarized and witnessed, and it makes Eleanor the legal heir of record. It doesn't say biological granddaughter. It says legal dependent and sole heir. Rose Thompson made that very clear." Laura laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was the kind of laugh that comes before a door slams. "This is insane," she said. "So some paper from 1995 says I'm not the real granddaughter? You know what, Kathy, this doesn't change a thing. I'm still Mom and Dad's daughter. Blood daughter. And if she's just some kid Grandma took in, then maybe she shouldn't even have the house. Maybe the house belongs to the actual family." She pointed at me, and her finger was shaking. "You've been playing house for 2 years. Living in a dead woman's home, pretending you're the favorite. But you're not even in the family tree. I want to tell you I stayed calm. I want to tell you I said something smart and dignified. But that's not what happened. What happened was my legs gave out and I sat down hard on a kitchen chair, and I said the only word that was in my head. Mom?" Mom's hand dropped. Her face was soaked. She looked at me like I was a vase she'd just knocked off a shelf. "Ellie," she whispered. "We were going to tell you. There it is. Those 5 words. The worst words you can ever hear. Because whatever comes after them is always something that should have been told a long time ago." "When?" I asked. "When I was 5. 10? On my wedding day? At my funeral?" Laura slammed her hand on the table. The plates jumped. The pie jiggled, a sad-looking apple pie nobody was going to eat now. "Don't you dare," Laura said. "Don't you dare make yourself the victim. You got a house. You got Grandma's love. You got everything. And I got leftover pizza and a couch in someone's basement." I turned to her. "You tried to steal my home. It's not your home. It's supposed to be family property." And right there, in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. My dad stood up. Slowly, like his knees hurt. He pulled the fork out of the pie, set it down careful on the edge of the plate, and looked at Laura. "Sit down, Laura." His voice was quiet, but it had the weight of a man who hadn't spoken all night and was finally done listening. Laura sat. Dad looked at me. His eyes were red. He hadn't been crying, not exactly, but they were wet around the edges, like he'd been holding something back for years and it was finally leaking out. "Your grandmother Rose," he said, and then he stopped. He corrected himself. "Rose. She wasn't your grandmother. She was your guardian. And she was a good woman. The best." I nodded, because I knew that part. Every memory I had of that woman was warm. She smelled like coffee and wool. She taught me to garden. She taught me to stand up for myself. "Why didn't you tell me?" I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a plea. Mom spoke now. Her voice was broken, little pieces of words stuck together with tears. "Your mother," she said, and then she stopped. "Your biological mother. She was your Grandma Rose's daughter." She looked at me hard, making sure I understood. "She was my sister, Ellie. My younger sister, Marlene." The room got very still. Marlene had a hard life. Made a lot of bad choices. She had you when she was 19, with a man who was gone before you turned 1. She loved you, but she couldn't do it right. She couldn't stay clean. The state got involved. And Rose stepped in. She said she'd take you. Raise you. Give you a real chance. And we agreed, Dad said, his voice rough as gravel. We already had Laura. We were struggling. Rose was alone, she had room, she had the money. She said it would be a fresh start all around. So you just handed me over, I said. The words tasted like metal. No, honey. Mom was crying freely now. We didn't hand you over. We gave you the best thing we could. We couldn't take you in. But we could love you. Be your aunt and uncle. And when Rose got sick, she made us promise to keep the secret. She wanted you to feel like you belonged. She said, don't let her think she was unwanted. She's my girl now. Make sure she knows she was wanted. I looked at Laura. She was stone-faced, and I swear I saw a flicker of triumph in her eyes. She thought she'd won. Blood meant something to her. She was the real daughter. I was just the charity case. And the house, I said, my voice getting stronger. Grandma. Rose left it to me. Why? Why not Laura? Why not you and Mom? Dad sighed. Because when Marlene died, 2 years after Rose took you in, she left you a small settlement. An insurance payout from a job she had for a few months. It was tiny. But Rose took that money and put it into the house. She said it was Marlene's way of providing for you. She made a deal with us. If we kept quiet about the adoption, if we let you grow up thinking you were her granddaughter, she would leave the house to you. Free and clear. She wanted you to have a place no one could ever take away. Laura stood up again. So I get nothing? The actual granddaughter gets nothing? This is bullshit. I don't care what some old woman wrote on a piece of paper. I'm blood. You two owe me. You owe me a home. And there it was. The real thing. The ugly, hungry thing that had been hiding all along. Laura wasn't desperate because she had nowhere to go. She was desperate because she felt entitled. She'd been measuring her worth against mine since we were kids, and when I got the house and she got nothing, it broke something inside her. I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel hurt. I felt tired. And a little bit angry. You want to know something, Laura? I said. She crossed her arms, waiting. What? When I found out about the house, I almost called you. I almost offered to let you move in. Just because you're my sister. But you never treated me like a sister. You treated me like competition. And tonight, you didn't ask. You announced. You demanded. You tried to take. Her face flickered. Just for a second, something like shame passed through it. Then it was gone. So what are you saying? She said. I stood up. My legs were still shaky, but my spine felt steel. I'm saying the house is mine. Legally, morally, all of it. Rose wanted me to have it. She wanted me to have a place where I could feel safe. And you know what? I'm going to keep it. But I'm also going to do something Grandma Rose would have wanted. I walked over to the counter where Kathy had left her folder, and I pulled out a spare piece of paper. I scribbled something down and handed it to Laura. She looked at it. What is this? It's the name of a family therapist, I said. Because I still want a sister. But I'm not going to be your doormat. If you ever want to actually be family, you can call that number. Until then, the only thing I owe you is this piece of paper. Kathy looked at me and gave a small nod. The kind of nod a woman gives another woman when she's stood her ground. Dad was still standing by the table. He looked at me with something I hadn't seen before. Respect, maybe. Or sadness. Or both. Ellie, he said. It's okay, Dad, I said. I didn't know if it was okay. But it was done. You and Mom did what you thought was right. I can't change the past. But I can decide what happens from here. The kitchen felt bigger now. The tension had cracked, and something new was filling the space. Something like the beginning of a different story. My story. Not Rose's story. Not Marlene's story. Mine. Laura crumpled the paper and threw it on the floor. She grabbed her purse and a coat that wasn't even hers, and she walked out the front door. The door slammed so hard the kitchen window rattled. Mom started crying again. Dad sat back down. I looked at the crumpled paper on the floor, and I didn't pick it up. Not yet. Because some things you can't fix in one night. Some things take time. But for the first time in my life, I knew who I was. Not the favorite granddaughter. Not the lucky sister. Not the charity case. I was Eleanor Thompson. I was a woman who'd been loved by a strong, stubborn old lady who wanted me to have a place to call home. And nobody was going to take that from me. Not tonight. Not ever. Kathy closed her folder. I'll have the final title documents ready by Friday, Eleanor. Thank you, Kathy. She smiled. Your grandmother would have been proud of you tonight. Outside, Laura's car started and screeched away from the curb. I watched the taillights disappear down the street, and I felt a strange thing. I felt sad. But I also felt free. Mom reached for my hand. Ellie, honey, can we talk? Just us? I squeezed her hand once and let go. Maybe tomorrow, Mom. I need to go home. Home. I said the word and it felt real for the first time. My home. My house. My life. I walked out onto the porch and breathed in the cool night air. Somewhere down the street a dog barked, and a neighbor's porch light flickered on. Normal things. Good things. And I knew, driving back to that house, the house with the old rose bushes out front and the crooked mailbox, that I was going to be okay. The secret was out. The fight was over. And the house was still standing. The next morning, I woke up in my grandmother's bed. My bed now, I guess. The sunlight came through those old lace curtains, the ones Rose had probably hung up 20 years ago, and it hit the quilt in that exact same pattern I remembered from being a kid. I lay there for a minute, just breathing. The house smelled like coffee. I'd set the timer on the machine last night. Small victories. I got up, poured myself a cup, and walked out onto the back porch. The yard was a mess. Rose had kept it perfect until the last year or so, when her knees got bad. Now the grass was too high, and the rose bushes needed trimming. The bird feeder was empty, swinging a little in the morning breeze. I'll get to you, I said out loud. Promise. At 10 o'clock, Mom's car pulled into the driveway. I watched her sit there for a good 30 seconds before she got out. She was wearing the same sweater from last night. I wondered if she'd slept at all. I opened the door before she knocked. Hey, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing her differently now. I led her into the kitchen and poured her a cup of coffee. She took it with both hands, like she was cold, even though it was already 70 degrees outside. We sat at Rose's kitchen table, the one with the burn mark from when I'd set a hot pan on it when I was 16. Rose had just laughed and said it gave the table character. I need to tell you some things, Mom said. About your mother. Your birth mother. I know her name was Marlene. Yes. My sister. Mom took a breath. She was 2 years younger than me. And she was the sun. Everybody loved Marlene. She could walk into a room and just light it up. But she had this darkness in her, too. Started when we were teenagers. Drugs, mostly. Nothing too bad at first. Just experimenting. That's what everybody said. She stopped and took a sip of coffee. By the time she was 18, it was bad. Really bad. She'd disappear for weeks. Come back looking like a ghost. Our parents tried everything. Rehab. Tough love. Praying. Nothing worked. And then she got pregnant with me. Mom nodded. She was 19. The father, she never told us his name. Just said he was gone and it didn't matter. She moved back home when she was about 6 months along. Cleaned up. For a little while, we all thought maybe this baby would save her. Maybe you would save her. I didn't say anything. I just waited. You were born in a little hospital in Springfield. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Marlene named you Eleanor, after our grandmother. She held you and she cried and she said you were the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Mom's voice cracked. She stayed clean for 3 months. 3 months. And then one night, I came over to check on her and I found her passed out on the couch and you were in your crib, screaming your head off, soaking wet, hungry. She hadn't fed you in hours. What did you do? I took you home with me. Called the social worker the next morning. Marlene went back into rehab, and the state started looking into whether she could keep you. Mom wiped her eyes with her sleeve. She tried so hard, Ellie. I need you to know that. She tried and she failed and she tried again. But by the time you were a year old, the court said she wasn't fit to be a mother. Not yet. Maybe never. And that's when Rose stepped in. That's when Rose stepped in. She sat us all down, your dad and me, and she said, that baby is family. She stays in this family. And she offered to adopt you. Legally. Raise you as her own. She was only 55 then, still full of energy. She said it would give her a purpose again, after Grandpa died. But you and Dad had Laura. And money was tight. Mom looked down at the table. Your father was working 2 jobs. I was waitressing. Laura was 3 years old and she had asthma, and the medical bills were piling up. And Rose. Rose had this house. She had Grandpa's pension. She said, let me take her. You can still be in her life. She'll know you as her aunt and uncle. She'll have cousins. She'll be loved. So you agreed. We agreed. It was the hardest thing we ever did. Signing those papers. Watching Rose drive away with you in the back seat. Mom was crying now, not trying to hide it. But I told myself it was the right thing. For you. For Marlene. For everybody. And Marlene? What happened to her? She got out of rehab. Moved to Arizona. Got a job at a diner. Met a man. For a few years, she sent Christmas cards. Birthday cards. She'd call Rose sometimes and ask how you were doing. But she never asked to see you. I think she was too ashamed. When did she die? 8 years ago. Overdose. In a motel room outside Phoenix. She was alone. Neither of us said anything for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. That slow, steady clock that Rose had wound every Sunday morning for 40 years. I found something else, Mom said finally. In Rose's papers. After she passed. Something I didn't show anyone. Not even your father. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. It was old, yellowed. She handed it to me. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. The paper was thin as tissue. Read it, Mom said. I unfolded it carefully. Dear Ellie, if you're reading this, you know the truth now. I'm sorry I never told you myself. I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd leave. Afraid of losing the best thing that ever happened to me. You are not a secret. You are not a mistake. You are my daughter in every way that matters. I chose you. Every morning for 30 years, I woke up and I chose you. And I would do it all over again. Your birth mother, Marlene, loved you too. She loved you enough to let you go. That's the hardest kind of love there is. Remember that. This house is yours. Not because I'm trying to make up for something. But because you belong here. You've always belonged here. In these walls. In these rooms. In this family. You are my Ellie. Nothing changes that. All my love, Rose. I read it twice. Then I folded it back up and put it in the envelope and set it on the table. For the first time in 2 days, I couldn't speak. She was something else, wasn't she? Mom said quietly. Yeah, I managed. She really was. We sat there together, in Rose's kitchen, with the coffee getting cold and the morning light getting brighter through the windows. Two women, bound together by a dead woman's fierce, stubborn love. Mom, I said finally. I'm not mad at you. Not anymore. I was, last night. I was furious. But now. I get it. You were stuck. You all were. Doesn't excuse the lies. No. It doesn't. But I understand them. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm still processing all this. It's gonna take time. But I don't want to lose you. Any of you. Even Laura, as crazy as she makes me. Mom laughed through her tears. She got the drama gene from my side of the family. I figured. Outside, a bird landed on the empty feeder. Looked around. Flew off again. I'll fill that later, I said. And I'll trim the roses. And I'll fix the mailbox. It's gonna take a while, but this is my house now. Yes, it is. Mom left around noon. We hugged on the porch, a real hug, not the stiff kind we'd been giving each other for years. She promised to come back next week. I promised to call. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store and bought birdseed. And rose food. And a new mailbox. The guy at the counter, old Mr. Patterson, said he'd heard about what happened at the dinner. In a town this size, news travels faster than a grease fire. Your grandma would be proud, he said. She always said you had more backbone than people gave you credit for. I thanked him and drove home. My home. That night, I sat on the back porch with a glass of lemonade and watched the sun go down. The roses were still overgrown. The lawn was still a mess. The bird feeder was crooked on its pole. But the house was still standing. And so was I. The next morning, Saturday, I woke up early. Made coffee. Went out to the front yard with the new mailbox and a screwdriver. Halfway through the job, a car pulled up. Laura. She got out slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be here. Hey, she said. Hey. I got your message. About the therapist. I'd texted her late last night. Just the name and number again, and 2 words, when you're ready. I'm not ready, she said. But, maybe someday. That's good enough. She looked at the house. At the roses. At me, kneeling in the dirt with a mailbox in my lap. You're really staying here? I'm really staying here. She nodded. Didn't say anything else. Just got back in her car and drove away. And I finished installing the mailbox. Brushed the dirt off my jeans. Went inside and made another pot of coffee. Life, I was learning, was not about the big, dramatic moments. It was about this. The morning light. The sound of birds. The smell of fresh coffee in an old kitchen. It was about showing up. Day after day. Even when it was hard. Even when you were angry. Even when you didn't have all the answers. Rose had known that. And now, finally, so did I. I poured my coffee, walked out to the back porch, and started making a list. Trim roses. Fix bird feeder. Paint the fence in the spring. Call Mom on Sunday. Look into that grief support group Kathy mentioned. Maybe start a garden next year. A long list. A good list. The kind of list you make when you're planning to stick around.